Okay, we're just starting up, and I'm going to have you guys, I'm going to ask that everybody watch the movie Hamnet, which is a movie that recently was released just earlier this year. I saw it with my girlfriend, and I thought it was wonderful. Now, mind you, it's about 80% of it's made up. Um, the director, Zhao, she knows what she's doing. And so she isn't trying to put what we know factually about Shakespeare into the theater. She's not putting together a documentary. She's putting a movie together with characters and things like of that ilk. But she understands Shakespeare. She understands the kind of person he was, has a sense of him. But I need to be very clear about this. It's mostly made up. Okay. Um, the details are filled in because we have a structure of what we kind of know about Shakespeare. Um, and she fills it in. There's an enormous amount you can do with what we have. You can add so much color, depth, and everything else to him to get a sense of him. And now, a lot of people have stepped into the dearth of information we have on him and filled things in a way that I don't think is all that useful. For example, we do have documentary evidence from his will that he willed to his wife, Anne or Agnes in this movie, his second best bed. Well, that seems like a little bit of passive aggressiveness from the gravesite. Leaving to your wife your second best bed and other things. We do know that she was, I think, like 24 or something like that, and he was 18 or 19 when they got married, and she was already pregnant. You can fill in the blanks. Um, and so it seems, and then he moved out not too long afterward and went off to London and made his name. It seems like you could project onto them a poor marriage. You could. You don't have any real documentary evidence to back that up, but you can fill in the spaces with that. That's reasonable. I wouldn't go there. The reason for the second best bed, we're not positive, but the first best bed was usually kept for the guests. And so, in other words, giving her the second best bed was more likely giving her the bed that they had slept in as husband and wife. More likely. Is it certain? No. It seems it is very plausible that Shakespeare and his wife had a very good marriage. Okay. And that's what Zhu takes on as one of the premises of the movie. And just let me play one of the scenes early on. This is her, Agnes, out in nature, just spacing out with her hawk. And a little heads up, this is from the start of the movie. um, she's extraordinary. The woman who plays Agnes is just extraordinary. Um, you get a sense throughout this movie that she is very comfortable in nature and with this whole other realm of that's not in at all academic, London, sophisticated in any sense at all. She's a very much a woman of Stratford-on-Avon. This is the town, the city that Shakespeare was from. It was kind of a medium-sized city out in sort of the west of London, west of England. And she's a local. This is like she grew up in San Bernardino. She isn't exactly a country girl, but she isn't exactly a city girl either. But she's very comfortable with a very different world than Shakespeare eventually became a part of when he moved away to London. Now, Shakespeare is from this city, is from Stratford-on-Avon. Shakespeare came from a comfortably middle-class family. His dad, in fact, was the mayor of that city. But then his family's fortunes pretty much came unraveled. Okay. Shakespeare would move on to London and build up his own wealth, an extraordinary amount of wealth. From what we know, he was quite wealthy and got a coat of arms, which is an extremely expensive undertaking. But he came from this background where the family lost its position, and he became associated with this woman who was kind of working class, but not exactly agrarian, but very much a local girl. And again, she goes by Agnes throughout most of the movie, and would have been Anne Hathaway in real life. But is not a sophisticated woman, but not a dumb little country bumpkin either. Shakespeare gets a sense of what a very different world is like that the sophisticates of London would not know about. And if you know Shakespeare's plays, which Miss Zhu, the director of the film, most certainly does, you would know Shakespeare very much aligned himself with this world in the film. Can it be proven? No. Okay. Can it be disproven? No. It's a plausible scenario, a plausible narrative for Shakespeare's life, okay, based on the illusions and possibilities. The way you can flesh out his plays is how she fleshed out this movie. Again, about 80% of this is made up, but boy, she does a magnificent job. Let me let it go for a little bit so you pick up on some of this. The details are magnificent. She won an Oscar for this performance. Extraordinary performance. This is Shakespeare giving Latin lessons. Okay. What do we know about him giving Latin lessons? Not that much. Did he work as a tutor? Maybe. Now, if he was still in Stratford-on-Avon at this time, we do have records of him having been educated at the local up through the high school level. And his father, John Shakespeare, did put him through that, and he would have had about 6 to 8 years of Latin. And this is English Renaissance Latin. He would have gotten drilled in it. And in his plays, Latin allusions to the works of Ovid, make up an enormous amount of his plays. And not so much Homer or Virgil, but Ovid. And I'm going to argue that Petronius plays quite a role in Shakespeare's writing. Could he have been a Latin tutor? Yeah, it's very plausible. It's a way for a young man who knows his Latin to have earned a bit of a living when his dad has fallen upon hard times. And so this is a very plausible scenario. Is it true? I don't know. But part of the background to this that the movie doesn't go into too much is the religious and political elements. It touches on some of them, but it really drills into the personal aspects of Shakespeare's intuitive nature and Agnes's intuitive nature, and how Shakespeare would have drawn on it. And that's something that's so essential to understanding his plays. And will come up throughout the semester. I will talk a wee bit about that. Shakespeare himself was officially, I guess, Protestant, but his mother was Catholic. And that might seem to you to be nothing at all, and it shouldn't seem to you to be anything today. Back then, it was a possible death sentence. It aligned you with a group that was often a target of executions, okay, depending on who was in power at the time. At this time, Elizabeth is in power, which means that the Protestants are in power. Okay, his mother's family would have been sidelined, would not have been executed, but he seems to have been associated, Shakespeare, William Shakespeare, throughout his life with many, seems to have been associated. Many Catholic who were somewhat hostile to Elizabeth seems to have. Okay. One scholar, Stephen Greenblatt, does believe that Shakespeare was probably Catholic, but he was on the surface, he would have been Protestant, or else he would not have had his career in London. Okay. That's behind all of this. Did Shakespeare, was he really a profoundly Catholic gentleman? Um, I don't know. I don't think so. Was he Catholic? Yeah, where allegiance is? I think he possibly was. But was he kind of jaded by religion? That's my sense. Because I don't see that, and you get a sense of this connection of his wife to nature, that this is where his heart lies, not in the political and religious disputes that were going on at the time. You get a sense of that, okay? But whether or not it was actually true, I don't know. But I would urge you to be aware of what you don't know with Shakespeare. As you understand him and come to develop your own understanding of him, there are some things we know, but there are a lot of conspiracy theories out there about him that I don't think are really worth the time. Like the idea that he had a horrible marriage, which I don't think is actually well founded. It seems to be founded in a line in his will, but they filled in a lot of blanks. I think Ms. Xu has a better understanding of what was going on with Shakespeare from this movie, but I don't know. But I would emphasize that I don't think anybody knows. But I think she personalizes Shakespeare and his marriage. Okay? I'll leave it there. Take care, you guys.
Tuggare vi rum var det tar